Welcome into Los Angeles, California. I'm Bill Reiter. We got a great show planned for you. 7 takeaways from last night's NBA action. Fred Hoiberg, now the head men's basketball coach at the University of Nebraska, is going to join the show. And Cody Bellinger's historic start. That and more right now from Los Angeles, California. I love the NBA playoffs. The second round, really interesting. We've got 7 takeaways, so let's dive right into them. The first one we should have known, the Bucks are still the Bucks. They shook off those Game 1 nerves, and the improvement in Game 2 was palpable. Just ask that Celtics team they beat up on. You see it there, the Game 2 improvement, especially for Giannis and Middleton, markedly different players, and it makes sense. There is going to be an adjustment at every round of the NBA playoffs. It just feels different. Here's a fun fact for you, gamblers, that certainly I should have paid attention to. The Bucks are now 21-1 following a loss this year, and Milwaukee looked like the team that they're supposed to look like. They played the level of defense that's supposed to come with the number 1 defense in the NBA. That's what Milwaukee posted in the regular season defensive efficiency rating. They also had the 4th best offense. They held the Celtics last night to below 40% shooting from the field, and Kyrie Irving in particular was held to 4 of 18 and 1 of 5 on threes, which brings us to lesson number 2, and this goes with the Bucks being the Bucks. Giannis is still Giannis. He was dynamic. He attacked the rim. He played downhill. We know that Mike Budenholzer, who will probably be coach of the year, the Bucks head coach, has given him the green light to shoot threes. Was 2 of 4, so he stretched the floor a little bit. And when Giannis plays like that, and he will, it is just, again, like his team, an adjustment. This is a group that is not impossible to beat, but really hard to beat. Giannis last night, 29, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, a block. And again, even though it's just 4 three-point attempts, hitting half of them, extremely significant. It's going to be a hell of a series. And I said this a lot, that Boston's real test, what they were really about, was going to be shown not when they won, not when they breezed through an early first-round series, but when they got punched in the nose. They got punched in the nose last night. Milwaukee was clearly the better team, which brings us to lesson 3. Boston's locker room chemistry, it isn't fixed yet. And the real sign of whether or not Kyrie is copacetic with that group of guys, remember, who made an Eastern Conference Finals Game 7 last year, that's going to come in Game 3 and beyond. And what doesn't help, and what gives me some pause and some concern if I'm a Celtics fan, is questions like this one to Kyrie Irving and answers like this one after the loss.
Kyrie, this is the first time you're in the playoffs as a lone all-star on your team, especially after a game like this. What is the extra burden there, and how do you intend to deal with it?
There's no extra burden. This is what I signed up for. This is what Boston traded for me for. So being able to go back, get back in the trenches, get ready for, another battle on Friday. This is what you live for.
Look, whoever asked that question, Shane, what do you mean the extra burden? I just said it. It happened last year. Everyone should know this, particularly Kyrie Irving. This Celtics team, minus Kyrie, was a game away from the NBA Finals last year. Forget the only all-star thing. The answer from Kyrie should have been to that reporter, look, man, we made a deep run last year, and I'm coming and trying to help and make a difference. Not to pretend that it's some kind of a task to carry this Celtics team that has no talent. Kyrie didn't play well, and that's a big part of the reason the Celtics lost that game. I'm not blaming Kyrie. We know the guy's a big-time player. He's a prime-time player. He hit that shot to help give Cleveland and LeBron that ring against the Warriors. But the reality is you're playing a Milwaukee Bucks defense that is legitimate, that is incredible, that is awesome, and the challenge is going to match that. You better be prepared for it, and you better play like a team. It brings us to lesson 4. This more applies to Rockets, Warriors series, but it is the whole deal. Basketball really is better when we focus on the game, not on complaining, not on secret reports that are leaked to other sports networks that carry water for frustrated teams and general managers, not pretending that you would have won an NBA championship if you'd just gotten the calls that you deserve. And last night's, both of those games, but especially Rockets-Warriors, which, you saw Golden State get up to a big lead and then give it away toward the end. There was an excitement, there was an energy, and the focus was where it needed to be, basketball, a point that Draymond Green utterly crushed, 100% accurate after that Warriors win in a 2-0 lead.
come out and play the game. And I think both teams did a great job of that. They weren't complaining about many calls. We weren't complaining about many calls because it's kind of embarrassing for the game of basketball. How much has been talked about fouls and officiating. Like, what about beating your man? What about stopping your man? No one talked anything about schemes the last 2 days. It's all been about foul calls.
And lesson 5, this is a bummer for Houston. Either Houston just doesn't have it against the Warriors or they're snake bit, but it's really semantics because they're not winning this series. Last year, it was the Chris Paul injury that in a lot of ways derailed the momentum of a Rockets team that certainly could have made the NBA Finals. They lost Game 6, they lost Game 7. We know the rest of the Warriors go on and win an NBA championship. And last night, and you can see it here, that freak injury involving Draymond Green where James Harden gets poked in the eyes, and for a lot of the game, he's got blurry vision. He can't play as well. There's talk of headaches. I don't know if they're snake bit. I don't know if they're cursed, but the reality is that it's hard enough to win an NBA championship, to advance to a finals when you've got bad luck. You throw in bad luck and these sorts of injuries with an opponent and a foe like the Warriors, and they're one of the best teams we've ever seen, and the odds are stacked against you, which was a lesson we saw last night. And I'll give the guys, I'll give Harden and CP3 credit in the face of being down 2-0. Having to deal with, at least in their own mind's eye, the fact that they think they lost Game 1 because of the officials, which is silly. And you could make the argument they didn't have the performance they would have liked. The Harden played really well because of Harden's eye. It's just a little discouraging going forward. They had a pretty good attitude and a little bit of a sense of humor.
Barely can see.
Oh, barely can see.
Yeah.
Were you able to get any relief from drops or anything else that they might?
Yeah, they put a couple drops,
Man, he whooped out over here. He looked like Thriller.
couple drops to help it, numb it a little bit, but I mean, just all the lights was blurry.
And sleeping is really fun, by the way.
Thank you, appreciate that. Appreciate that.
Just get some sleep, man. Everything's fixed. Houston is snake bit. There's just something wrong there. But I do think lesson 6 needs to be said. Among all the adulation for Kevin Durant, who is a remarkably special player, we're not doubting that here on the show. But there's still a weakness for this Warriors team. If you watch the game closely, Golden State was up 12-14 with 5 minutes left, and you saw a Rockets team that was able to cut it to a couple possessions with a minute and a half left, in part because Kevin Durant buys into that narrative too often. The ball stopped moving. Durant started taking bad shots, hit a few of them, missed a few of them when it didn't feel significant, had the turnover at the end, KD did, then Steph. Now the Warriors hang on, but the reality is, and we saw this last year against the Rockets, one reason that the Rockets had a chance to win that series is because Harden was amazing, and one reason the Rockets lost last year is because Chris Paul got hurt. It's also true that the Warriors put the Rockets in a situation to win last year because KD stopped playing Warriors basketball and started playing Kevin Durant ISO basketball, and I'm telling you, if you go back and you watch the tape in that fourth quarter, KD did it again. I know he's amazing. I know he's an epic talent, but he's not playing the kind of basketball that attracted him to Golden State in the first place. And he wasn't that efficient last night. He was 9-22, which is 41%. That's well below what he shot in the regular season from the field, which is about 53%. A lot of his points came from free throws. And I'm not hating on the guy. I'm just saying if you have a Houston team that is healthy, if you have a Bucks team that starts to feel it, even a Denver team, if that's the team that advances, I don't think they beat the Warriors. But there's a lesson, and if you can get Kevin Durant to start playing Kevin Durant ISO basketball, that Warriors team stops being that unbeatable force that we've seen the last few years. And finally, lesson 7, even though I've made some predictions here, these are long series. You can't overreact to anything. We have seen in the last 10 years, in the last few years, remarkable comebacks. Tom Brady, the greatest Super Bowl comeback in the history of the NFL. Mike Cubby's coming back from down 3-1 against the Indians in the World Series. And LeBron James and the Warriors reminding us that if you're down 3-1 in a finals, you can still get it done against, by the way, a Warriors team that was down 3-1 in the Western Conference Finals. The point is, Houston fans, even though I think you have no chance, you probably do. Portland tonight could certainly win this game against Denver, and each of those series in the East tied at 1 apiece are going to be dogfights. It's a great NBA playoffs, and it's a lesson from last night. Every game matters, but every game does not dictate what happens in the game that follows. We're going to talk about this with Fred Hoiberg. He's the new coach at the University of Nebraska. Previously was the Bulls head coach. We'll talk some college hoops. We'll talk some NBA. And then we'll get into a little bit of baseball talk. But first, Fred Hoiberg coming up on the program Writer's Block with me, Bill Reiter, on CBS Sports HQ in just a minute. All right, welcome into Los Angeles, California, back into LA. I'm Bill Reiter, and thrilled now to go to where I'm from, go to the Midwest, and talk to Fred Hoiberg, former NBA coach of the Chicago Bulls, now in charge of that Nebraska program. Coach, congratulations on the job, and thanks for making time for us.
I appreciate that, Bill. Thanks for having me on.
I have a lot of family from Nebraska. They're very excited about the task in front of you and what they think is a lot of reasons that you're going to be successful. As you look at your program, not a lot of starters coming back. What are the things you're looking to do to get this basketball team, to get this program where you want it to be?
Yeah, it's this team does lose a lot from last year with Glenn Watson and James Palmer and Isaac Copeland, and we'll see what happens with Isaiah Roby. He's in the early entry pool for trying to get into the draft. And, we're going to support him however we can. I know how excited he is to be invited to the NBA Combine coming up here in a couple weeks. So we lose a lot, and, it's going to be, up to our new guys to come in here and fill those shoes. We're excited about some of the players that we have assigned these last few weeks. This last weekend, we got a very good point guard in Cam Mack, who played at Salt Lake Community College. Very good, getting into the paint very fast with the ball. Excellent vision in playmaker. Gervais Green, who was signed by Tim Miles in the previous staff, is a guy that we feel very fortunate has kept his commitment. He's a combo guard that, again, does a lot with the ball and plays with great speed. Hanif Cheatham is another player who's a fifth-year transfer. Got him after starting at Marquette. Spent the last year at Florida Gulf Coast. And he gives us great experience. Another guy that can play with the ball in his hands and can make a shot and get into the paint. And then Matej Kappas as well, a player that shot as well as anybody last year. He was 7th in the nation in three-point shooting at over 45%. And our newest player that we just signed today, who will actually sit out this season in Delano Banton. He's a player that's got great versatility and certainly fits how we want to play. So we're excited about where things are these first couple weeks on the job.
Coach, you're a well-respected guy around the NBA. You're a well-respected guy at the college basketball level. You certainly had options, and we've seen a lot of guys who have coached or have a pedigree at the NBA level like you do as a player and a coach have a lot of success in just finding jobs and building successful programs at the collegiate level. So for you, a guy that has options, why is Nebraska the place you want to be for you, for your family, for your basketball career?
Well, it starts with my family, and I've got a lot of connections to this university, and it starts with my grandparents. My dad's father, my paternal grandfather, was a professor here in the history department for over 30 years. My other grandfather coached here for 9 years. He was here from 55 to 64, and has some great wins, some of the best wins in the program's history, with beating Kansas, a team led by Wilt Chamberlain, and then the following week knocking off number 1 Kansas State. With Bob Boozer. And, my parents both went here. My dad got his PhD University of Nebraska back in 1972. I was actually born in Lincoln before my dad moved the family to Ames when I was actually 2 years old. But we spent a lot of time in Nebraska with holidays, spending time with our grandparents. I've got aunts and uncles in the area, cousins. My brother lives in Nebraska. So, it really always has been a second home for me.
I love it. Yeah, I've got roots there as well. Coach, since we've got you and it's NBA season, want to hit you with a few NBA questions, given your background and your pedigree as a player and a coach. And one of the big storylines that we've seen the last week is the officiating, some complaints from the Rockets. As a guy that coached at that level, as a guy that still follows the NBA, what have you made of the officiating in the ways in which in post-game press conferences and maybe just through the media, players and coaches try to maybe sometimes shape and bend how officials are going to react in upcoming games?
Well, I think it is a little discouraging. It takes away from, I think, where the game is right now, which is as good as it's ever been, with the talent that in the skill level of today's player, to have so much talked about in the scrutiny on these officials. It's just, it's unfortunate. I'll say it that way, that, that's what's dominating the press. You see all these talk shows that are on right now, and, they're not talking about, Giannis's skill set. They're not talking about, Harden and his ability to score and his one-on-one ability and, everything that the Warriors do. The focus so much is on the officials, and I think that's very unfortunate. Hopefully moving forward, it looks like it was, a little bit better last night. Those guys have a hard job. They're going out there and officiating the best players in the world, and I think for the most part they do a good job.
You coach Jimmy Butler. You know what he's about, his positives, his negatives. When you look at what he's trying to do in Philly, what's your expectation for Jimmy with that team in this series, and just whether or not the Sixers can get the best of Toronto?
He was phenomenal in Game 2 and really became the go-to guy. And, one thing about Jimmy, there's not a better competitor at any level, all across the world in basketball than what Jimmy brings you. He's always going to give you a great defensive effort. And, he's one of the rare players in this league that does it at an elite level on both ends of the floor. It's the trades that Philadelphia made to put them in a position to win a championship, not only with Jimmy, but with Tobias Harris, bringing him in, the way that team is built with obviously Embiid, being as dominant a force as there is on the inside, Ben Simmons with his unique skill set, and then you got Reiter out there as your sniper. So, they've got so many things that they can do with that team. And again, they can go to a lot of different players. Embiid, if he's got to go into the block, they put the ball in Jimmy's hands a lot, obviously in that fourth quarter. The other night against Toronto. So, good for them to get the split. Should be a great series.
Coach, you brought up Giannis and his ridiculous skill set. It feels like even now he may be the MVP. The sky is the limit. Mike Budenholzer has him green-lit the green light for shooting threes. Giannis, I think he hit 2 of 4 in last night's game. How do you, if you're any team going up against him, the Celtics or otherwise, how do you scheme against Giannis? What do you try to do to slow down his remarkable talent on the offensive end?
Well, he's as difficult a game prep as there is in that league. And, the biggest thing that we always tried to do, not that it works very well, but, we tried to get the elbows covered and try to get the boxes. And you see Boston, when they're getting back in transition, which you have to do against Giannis in that Milwaukee team, is you have to show length, you have to show numbers, and you have to try to get him to kick the ball out. The other thing you have to make him do is shoot. And, if he's going to make 50% of his threes, you're probably not going to beat him. And, Budenholzer's done an unbelievable job. And, the system that he runs with a 5-out spread offense has been so good for that team. You look at their 3-point rate, where it is this year, as opposed to where it's been in the past. And they've done a great job building that team of shooters around the most unique player in the game.
Coach, we've talked a lot here on the show about Damian Lillard and maybe to the casual fan how underappreciated he is for what at least I think is a superstar level guy. He plays on the West Coast, so a lot of folks on the East Coast are sleeping when he's playing games in the regular season. And Portland's been good, but hasn't advanced very deep, and sometimes at all in the postseason the last few years. When your Bulls teams were playing against that Portland team, and you looked at Lillard on tape, can you give us a sense of what you saw just in terms of how you regard him relative to the other guys in the NBA?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's as unappreciated a player as there is in the game, and he's just such a lethal player. Can go for 50 any night. And then his counterpart in the backcourt, C.J. McCollum, he's another guy that can give you 50. He gave us 50 in 3 quarters a couple years ago in Portland, and he's playing at such an elite level right now, and that's going to be a great series with Denver. He just got so much skill out there on the floor. You look at what Jokic is doing right now. He got triple-double threat. He just seems to be getting better by the minute every time he's on the floor. Murray has really elevated his game this year as well, and then they've got great role players around those guys. But as far as Lillard, he's absolutely a superstar and should be in the conversation of best point guard in the league.
Fred Hoiberg, really appreciate the time. A lot of excited family members that you're in Nebraska. I would tell you to go easy on the Hawkeyes, but you're not going to, and you're not supposed to. So I'll just say best of luck, and thanks so much for making time for us.
Yeah, Bill, thank you. Take care.
Appreciate you. Fred Hoiberg on the show. He's an Iowa legend. He's about to be a Nebraska legend. I think going to be very successful with that program. That is a great hire for the University of Nebraska. Really enjoyed the conversation and enjoyed the fact that you talked a little NBA with us. And I agree. And you talk to guys around the NBA like Fred Hoiberg, Damian Lillard, wildly underappreciated. I think that's going to change. We're gonna get into my prediction. I'm not going to give it away yet. What I think, maybe I'll give it away. But it is my big bet of the night. There's only one NBA game. The Trailblazers are +4. I'll give you a little instinct to how I'm going to turn around my losing streak when we come back to the show here on CBS Sports HQ in just a minute. All right, welcome back into the show. There he is, the hottest player in baseball. Cody Bellinger has had a ridiculous first month to the Major League Baseball season, and he has more than earned going inside the numbers, and they are some eye-popping numbers to behold. We start with the first of them, the number 37, as in the Dodgers' first baseman has driven in 37 runners, 37 runs driven in. That's the most by a player in the history of Major League Baseball before the start of May. We're not done. How about 14? Bellinger and Christian Yelich, the reigning MVP, became the third and fourth players ever to hit 14 home runs before May 1st. The last two were Albert Pujols and Alex Rodriguez. Those guys, to quote the big Lebowski, sure can ball. How about the number 10? Bellinger leads the majors in 10 offensive categories. He leads the MLB in average, in hits, in home runs, in extra base hits, in runs driven in total bases, on base percentage, slugging, and OPS. Yeah, he's playing pretty well. Next up is 92. Bellinger's offensive win percentage is 92%. That's the highest since Barry Bonds back in 2004. Offensive win percentage is the percentage of games a team with 9 of this players batting would win. So if the Dodgers had 8 more of these guys, they would win 140 games or something like that. I'm bad at math. And finally, 3.5. That's Bellinger's WAR. That's a staggering number at this point in the season. A full win more than his crosstown rival, Mike Trout. You know, we should call this segment I'm Bill Reiter and I Hate Myself segment, because I traded Cody Bellinger, my forever, very important fantasy baseball league, for Bryce Harper because I'm an idiot. And I was an idiot last night because I didn't listen to that little voice inside me that said Vegas is pulling the wool over your eyes, which brings me, unfortunately, to Bill's question mark big bet of the day. Yeah, I deserve the booze. I knew it. I said it. 7.5 was a siren song leading me to the rocks, and I sank last night. Should have known. Vegas always knows. 61% of the public, like me, was on Boston. Got that one wrong. So I'm not going to pretend I have a lot of confidence. I'm on a 2-game losing streak, but you know what you do when that happens? You just throw more good money after it until you turn it around. I think Portland's going to win a game in Denver in this series. I think Portland's going to push this series. I had them winning in 6, but to 6 or 7, I think Dame's going to go off. It's +4 if I want to bet Portland. I do. I want to bet Portland. Give me the Portland Trail Blazers. Denver is a great basketball team, but Damian Lillard is the best player on the floor, and he is capable of bringing his team, driving his team, carrying his team to a road win. I've seen it before. We're going to see it tonight. I think Portland gets the win. I certainly think they cover the 4. I think it was 4 last time and I lost, so I'm just doubling down. Come on, Damian Lillard. Be my hero tonight. Thank you for being here and hanging out. We've got Bubba Watson on the show tomorrow, which is really exciting. The PGA has moved up the PGA Championship to May. It's a couple weeks from now. It'll be on CBS Sports, and we'll talk to Bubba about that, about his Twitter rivalry with Phil Mickelson. He's a funny dude, and a lot of other topics. Looking forward to that conversation. Thank you for being here. CBS Sports HQ from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Going to get you caught up on what's trending in the world of sports. Sportsline coming up in 30 minutes, and we'll see you tomorrow, 5 Eastern, 2 Pacific on Writer's Block.